I came back from 3 years overseas to find some woman had stolen my family's $4 million lakefront property, installed a $2,000 electronic gate, and started charging my elderly neighbors $50 each just to visit their own grandkids at the lake. This woman, Deardra Hutchinson, had turned my grandfather's simple dirt road into Willowbrook Estates, complete with fake stone pillars and security cameras pointing directly at my cabin windows. I pulled up in my dusty pickup, and this robotic voice started demanding a resident access code, like I was some kind of common criminal. And then she comes tearing down the hill in her golf cart, designer sunglasses bouncing on her face, screaming, "Private property. You're trespassing on my land." I rolled down my window real calm, held up my property deed, the one signed by my grandfather in 1987, and she froze, face going from that fake sweet smile to pure terror, because she knew exactly what was coming next. Now, before we get into how all of this went down, let me back up. My name's Marcus Brennan. I'm a 34-year-old Army engineer who just finished a 3-year rotation overseas. While I was dodging IEDs in Afghanistan, Deardra Hutchinson was busy executing the most audacious land theft I've ever seen. My grandfather bought this 40-acre slice of paradise in 1987 for just $12,000, back when you could still smell the pine sap from the fresh-cut logs when he signed that deed. It was prime lakefront property with 800 feet of pristine shoreline. Grandpa built our family cabin with his own 2 hands, and every summer, every 4th of July, every Christmas morning for 30-plus years, it echoed with laughter and arguments about who caught the biggest fish. The worn, smooth texture of the deck railings told the entire story of our family. When Grandpa passed while I was deployed, he left me everything. The will was ironclad, the deed was bulletproof, and I had every intention of retiring there after my service. But, well, I couldn't exactly fly home to guard my property while I was tracking down insurgents in the Afghan mountains, could I? Enter Deardra Hutchinson, 52, recently divorced, and apparently angrier than a hornet's nest in a hurricane. She fled Minneapolis after her husband ditched her for a dental hygienist. Apparently, even root canals were more appealing than another night with her. She rolled into Lake Thornton with her insurance settlement money in hand and a mission to civilize us backwards rural folk. She bought the ugliest house in 3 counties. This concrete monstrosity that looked like a suburban fortress had mated with a shopping mall. This thing squatted on an artificial hill like a giant middle finger pointed at every modest cabin around it. Within 6 months, the smell of her imported Kentucky bluegrass fertilizer was choking out the natural wildflowers that had been there since the glaciers melted. Now, Lake Thornton used to be the kind of place where neighbors helped neighbors. If someone's dock needed fixing, 3 guys would show up with beer and power tools. If someone's septic backed up, everyone kicked in $20. Nobody charged fees. Nobody demanded permits. But Deardra had other plans. Her first move was voluntary road maintenance fees, even though County Road 47B had been county maintained since Carter was president. Every morning at dawn, her designer SUV crunched the gravel beneath it, and she'd patrol her territory, making notes about who needed to be corrected. Then came the real kicker. While I was serving my country, trusting that property rights still meant something in America, Deardra convinced some clueless county clerk to reclassify our family's access road as her private community entrance. She installed the $2,000 electronic monstrosity right where my property line met the county road. Suddenly, the path my grandfather had used for 35 years became the exclusive entrance to her fake Willowbrook Estates empire. She started charging access fees to my neighbors who'd lived there longer than she had. And here's the part that'll really make your blood boil. She convinced everyone I was dead. She actually told my neighbors that I'd been killed overseas and that my property was abandoned. She was just temporarily managing the estate. She even gave tours to potential buyers, pointing out where they could subdivide my land for maximum profit. When I finally showed up at that electronic gate, I thought I'd find my cabin exactly as Grandpa left it, dusty but intact, waiting for me to start the next chapter of my life. But no, Deardra had changed the locks, moved all my family photos into the tool shed, and installed security cameras pointed directly at my windows like I was running a drug house. 3 days after I discovered my ransacked cabin, a certified letter showed up in my mailbox, which, by the way, she'd replaced with a fancy brass one labeled Willowbrook Estates Management Office. Inside was 8 pages of pure legal fiction. Deardra was demanding $3,600 in accumulated community assessments, a $500 emergency gate installation fee, and another $200 for a compliance inspection on my unauthorized structures. She was applying some real law, the Minnesota Planned Community Act, but she was using it like a toddler trying to cut birthday cake with a chainsaw. The letter threatened to place a lien on my property in 10 days if I didn't pay up. But here's the thing. Military training teaches you to gather intelligence before reacting. So, instead of panicking, I got curious. I spent a week at the county courthouse, and let me tell you, those dusty record books told a story that would have made Deardra wet herself if she knew what I was finding. Turns out, she hadn't filed the proper HOA formation documents with the state. You can't just declare yourself president of something that doesn't exist. The road reclassification? Completely improper. The county engineer admitted they changed the designation without the required public notice period. And here's the kicker. Deardra's entire financial desperation was laid bare. Turns out her divorce settlement required her to maintain her property value above $400,000, or she'd lose her alimony payments. My shoreline, my family's legacy, was worth a lot of money. And Deardra, the so-called community leader, wasn't just stealing my land for power. She needed it to avoid financial ruin. She was stealing from my neighbors too. She'd been collecting road maintenance fees from 7 families, totaling about $2,100 a month. But guess what? There was no maintenance account, no receipts, no payments to contractors. It was all a straight-up embezzlement operation. I wasn't going to sit back and watch her destroy my family's legacy or my neighbors' lives. I started digging, talking to the neighbors, armed with my grandmother's chocolate chip cookie recipe as a conversation starter. That's when I learned Deardra had convinced elderly Gladys Morrison that I was dead, and she was in charge now. She even tried to buy my property deed from the probate court for $15,000. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. So I started gathering my evidence. I went to the county attorney. I got my neighbors involved. I reached out to Sarah Justice, my lawyer neighbor, and we built a legal case. We filed a quiet title action to prove clear ownership of my property. We contacted the state revenue department for her unlicensed business operations. And we called in the county engineer to explain how she manipulated the road designation. But things didn't stop there. Deardra went nuclear. She hired a private investigator to follow me. She tried to bribe county officials. She started spreading rumors that I was a dangerous veteran. But all of that was just noise. The deeper we dug, the more her lies unraveled. She'd been using my property shoreline rights to inflate her own property value, and she was desperate enough to commit fraud and ruin the entire community in the process. We kept pushing forward. I filed complaints about her business violations. I collected evidence. And when it was time for the county commission meeting, we brought it all. The community gathered. The press showed up. And in the end, Deardra's empire crumbled. The county attorney dropped the hammer, and Deardra was arrested for fraud and embezzlement. She was done. And as I watched the bulldozers haul away her $2,000 gate, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Justice had been served. But here's the thing. This wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about my property. This was about standing up for what's right. It was about protecting my neighbors. And it was about making sure that the American dream, my family's legacy, wasn't stolen by a greedy, desperate woman. So, what would you do if someone tried to steal your family's land while you were away defending our country? Would you stand up? Would you fight? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. This isn't just my story. It's a fight that belongs to all of us.